Well, here we go.
Okay.
This is going to be Donna's story. So, first question, Donna, which we all get asked. What compelled you to become a nurse?
Well, nothing. When I was in high school and being an immigrant, I was told to take only secretarial and clerical courses because that was probably all I would be able to do. And I had 3 best friends, and they all applied to nursing school. And not knowing what nursing contained or anything, I decided to apply to St. Elizabeth's School of Nursing. And I, of course, was not accepted because lack of any science classes whatsoever. And my parents came and talked to the director of the school, Sister Gerharda, and of course they spoke English, but it was very broken. And my dad kind of pleaded, is there anything she could do that she could get into the school? And Sister said if she goes to the summer classes, takes chemistry and algebra, and she gets a C, we'll accept her, under the understanding that if she gets a D in any course, she will be immediately removed. And so that's what I did. And I got in.
Beautiful.
And I never studied so hard in my whole life.
All right.
And once I figured out how I could understand what I was learning, I had to start with the basic. I had to go to the cellular level to understand the basics. Once I could understand the basics, it was a lot of hard work, but it made my life so much better. And I had so much support from, and I never got below a B.
Wow. Wonderful. Thank you.
Or above a B. Yeah.
Well, moving on, then go forward, Donna, and tell us a little bit about your nursing career.
I graduated in 1968, 3rd in the class. And at that particular time, you got to go to wherever you wanted to go. So I chose critical care because I had always wanted to be a doctor and a lawyer. And I could never reach those goals, so I decided on critical care. And at that time, we had 9 beds. And one of my other graduate cohorts and I were the only 2 working that unit, 3 to 11s, and before we got our board results. And we had 2 coronary beds and 7 intensive beds. And Sandy, who was the other nurse, was sent to critical or coronary care classes. And while she was gone, I was the only RN, and just hoped nothing would happen. And my guardian angel was up and going. And at that time, of course, we didn't have all the machinery, but we had to count our IVs by our wristwatches. And we did have the old needle monitors. And I was told what to look for to call a code. And that was taped by the telephone. So, but it was, I never felt so fulfilled, and I never loved something so much as I did that. And we would go through 1 bar of soap each day, each shift. And you never worried about working 3 shifts in a row. That's the way it was. You got paid once a month, the last Friday of the month. And my very first paycheck, which I have a picture of, taking out all the taxes and everything, was $100 for 1 month's work. And then I took, Dr. Neumeier started hemodialysis at the VA hospital. And so I signed up to be a hemodialysis nurse too. And I would do that once a week. And then a couple of our patients died. And I asked to go to hemodialysis classes and they wouldn't send me. And so I decided that I should go someplace else because I was afraid I was going to be around and somebody would die because I didn't know what I was doing. So I went over to Bryan in their intensive care unit and worked there 3 to 11s, the best shift in the whole world. And then I decided I'd like to teach. So they said, if you want to teach at the school, you have to go and get a bachelor's of science. So I went to Nebraska, or you had to have a bachelor's degree in a science. So I did that at Wesleyan. Then a state board decided that I got the job at the school, but I worked on the weekends on the floor and or an intensive. Then then the state board decided you had to have a bachelor's in nursing. So I went to UNMC, got my bachelor's in nursing. Then the state board decided that if you wanted to teach, you had to get your master's in education. And so I went to the university, got my master's in adult education. Then the state board decided that in order to teach nurses, you had to have a master's in nursing. So I went to Bishop Clarkson on the weekend program because my husband worked during the week. And by that time I had a little baby girl. And so I would go Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for 2 classes. And I was able to finish in 1.5 years. And so I was able to teach. I taught intensive care, psych, med-surg. The only thing I never touched was antepartum and OB. I can work OB. I can't teach it. But anyway, and don't put me in antepartum because all I know is where babies come from. And I know so much about adults, but anyway. Oh. And then I worked at the School of Nursing during the week, and on the weekends I worked at Lincoln General, and I was head nurse at Lincoln General. Well, they called me at Bryan, the insurance company, and wanted to know if I'd be interested in doing risk management. And I said, well, sure, I suppose. So I did that full time and worked on the weekends at the hospital. And then I went back to, after 10 years, I went back to working at the school. And I always worked on the floor on the weekends. And then since I always wanted to be a lawyer too, Dr. Matthias Okoye, a forensic anthropologist, came to Lincoln from Washington, D.C. He was the coroner for 10 years there, and he didn't want to raise his family there. So I asked him if he would be willing to talk to our class. And then he approached me and asked me if I would be willing to do a curriculum for a forensic nursing course. And that's what I did.
Wow.
And so I took the class and got certified. So
goodness.
But anyway,
you certainly have done it all.
Well, the state of Nebraska didn't recognize forensic nursing, and neither did the American Nurses Association. So I decided that they should. So I wrote letters and talked to both of the presidents of those organizations. And the American Nurses Association recognizes forensic nursing, and the state of Nebraska recognizes forensic nursing. But the state board recognizes it, but not the state of Nebraska. All the states around Nebraska, I think Nebraska is probably one of 15 or 10 states that doesn't recognize forensic nursing, even though they have SANE nurses or sexual exam nurses in every state in the union. And some states will not call them forensic nurses. In the state of Nebraska, they will not call them forensic nurses. They will call them assault nurses. So, and
okay.
So that's, and I'm a certified, I was 50 years, I worked in nursing. So after I graduated, or after I I was forced to retire because they changed the policies and the pension plan and the insurance plan. And I was grandfathered under the older one, which was wonderful. And they didn't want to pay that. So they did that to 5 of us that year. And they did that to an awful lot of other employees.
Aww.
And so I retired and I volunteered. I asked to volunteer at the police department, and they said, well, would you like to do fingerprints? And I said, oh, sure, I'm teachable. So I did fingerprints. I just rolled fingerprints for everybody but criminals. And then they asked me to do other things, file and clerical work, because they were really busy. And so I would do just about anything they asked. And I took a online fingerprinting class. And I was more shocked that I passed that than when I passed my state boards. And so they allowed me to classify fingerprints. And so I really, this is kind of, I think it's kind of sad to say, but when I was at the police department, and especially working with those ladies, and I also worked in the records department, every single night for 6 years when I left, somebody would say, thank you, Donna, for helping us out. And working 50 years with nurses and physicians that sometimes had a little bit of a temper.
You didn't get much thanks.
Didn't get much, but the patients, and I worked in intensive when I worked on the weekends. That was my favorite place because even though the patients weren't responsive, they knew that I was there. And I mean, I love the profession so much that I knew they knew I was there. They knew that I was a safe provider, and they knew that I cared. And sometimes I'd just get a handshake, squeeze, and that was it. But I knew they knew. And it still makes my eyes water because that was what I always wanted to do.
Your passion. Well, Donna, you certainly had a beautiful, beautiful career. Let's move on. And I know you just have an awesome personal family story about your immigration to the U.S. after you'd spent time in the Nazi internment camp. Could you just briefly walk us through that just a little bit again?
I will. I will make it brief. When Poland was invaded by the Germans, they went to all the small rural areas and they took the oldest child in each home, male or female, and they just took them out of the home and sent them to Germany to slave labor camps. My father was assigned to a sheep farmer, and my mother was assigned as a housekeeper to a high-ranking Nazi military person. And they did that until the Americans came and liberated the camps, and the Russians liberated the city of Poland and the areas of Poland. And my mother and my father were relocated to a army settlement camp, and that's where they met. And my dad knew German, Russian, Polish, and a little bit of English. So the American soldiers asked him if he would help them, and he would be a policeman. And if he agreed, his family would be able to get meat. So they got married, and his family included, of course, his wife. And by that time, I was born in the camp, and my sister was born 2 years later. So we were in the camp for two and a half years. And then we came over to the United States in 1949. And we eventually settled in Lincoln, Nebraska. And when I started kindergarten, I didn't know, the only word I knew was hello. And I swear to this day, I have no idea how I ever got through each class and never was held back. Maybe I know young kids learn early, but I swear to God, I just don't know how I did it. But I did it, it's done, and life went on. So.
Oh, marvelous. Oh, what a story. Could you tell us a little bit about your family?
Okay. I was married for 30 years, and my husband developed a brain disorder that was a combination of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and he died almost a year to the diagnosis. And that was in like June of 1993. And my daughter was getting married that October. But anyway, she had a hard time with that. But she did get married. And I couldn't get pregnant for 5 years, and she is a in vitro baby. And I was sent to Mayo Clinic because that was the only place that would accept women over the age of 25. And I got pregnant on the second trial. And then I developed preterm labor. And so I was in the hospital from January to March. And she was born 2 weeks early. But she's I always say that the sun doesn't shine until she opens her eyes. So she's a veterinarian in Sioux City, and she's married to a very good man. He's very good to me. They've been married 10 years this year.
Aww.
And I have a brother who's 7 years younger, and a sister who is 2 years younger. And my dad worked one job and my mom worked 2 jobs. So I always have to remind them, remember who raised you. So they but anyway.
Nice. Very nice.
You did, but you did it things because that's the way it was. So
exactly. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you, Donna. One of the goals of the Nebraska Nurse Honor Guard is to inspire the next generation of nurses. So what would your advice be, Donna, if you had to speak to a young nurse just starting out in their career?
You know what you're getting into. You have to, in the 4 years of training, you have to know what you're getting into. And you honestly have to love what you do. You have to love the bedpans, you have to love the emesis basins, but you have to, I know this sounds quirky, but I told this to my great niece who just graduated. I told her that many times. I said, but you have to remember that you're doing this for somebody that is depending on you for everything that they need while they are sick. And if you see something wrong, you go to the chain of command, but you can't hide it. I've always believed that, and I've done it myself. But the main thing is that you have to know what you're getting into, but it's all worth it. I cried when patients died. I hugged families. I took care of a little boy that was in a bicycle accident, and he looked just like my 6-year-old godson. Aww. And when I had to, Dr. Swisher came in, shut off the ventilator, and he said we could pull out the tube at that time. And I knew what to do. But I couldn't do it. I went to the bathroom and I just lost it. I just lost it. They asked me if they heard me clear out in the nurse's station with both doors shut and asked me if I wanted to go home. And I said, no. So they said, how about we switch patients? We switched patients and they moved me clear to the other side of the hall. So I would, and I'm not ashamed of that at all.
No, not at all. Oh, well, Donna, that's some good advice to some young nurses. That would be great advice. Thank you for that.
I just add one more thing and then I'll quit.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure.
If a light goes on and it's not your patient, it doesn't matter. Answer it because that person needs something.
Yeah, that's such
great. Good advice. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So, Donna, what compelled you to join the Nebraska Nurse Honor Guard?
The article that was in the Journal Star with the picture of everybody, and Wright is her name.
Pam Wright?
And no. Gosh, I can't think of her name. Was a student of mine. Was a student of mine, and so I contacted her, and she told me who to contact because I thought that was I thought I always thought the nurse should be recognized because I still think that there's a lot of Emma Gantry type of logic when they come to nurses. So, and I thought every nurse should be honored.
Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. We agree completely. So, as I said, this is our very first member spotlight and our very first Nebraska Nurse Honor Guard newsletter. And we've decided that no spotlight is going to be complete without one last hard-hitting question. And as you know, nurses, we're crazy about medical jargon and medical acronyms. So we're going to call this one the MMFH question. Okay. And what that is what's your favorite movie or book, favorite music or song or band, favorite food, and finally, what are some of your favorite hobbies?
My favorite movie is The Passion of the Christ. I watch it 3 or 4 times a year, and it doesn't matter what type of season it is. And my favorite books are Agatha Christie, novels. And I have no hobbies except reading. I'm a basic cook. I can't put my hands in dirt. My favorite food is chicken and fish, any combination, doesn't matter. What's the other one, movie?
Favorite music, song,
group?
Group?
My favorite music is by Barbara Streisand. I think she has the voice of an angel. Her and Celine Dion, I think, are just, they just are just a voice out of heaven.
Yeah.
And my favorite song is I Can See Clearly Now by Johnny Nash. I asked that to be sung at my funeral too.
Oh,
so, but,
wonderful.
I think that was all of them.
I think so. I think we hit it all. Well, Donna, any last words that you want to put into your member spotlight that you think we need to know?
I just think this is the best profession in the whole world. And I hope everybody says that about their profession, but
good.
This is mine. There is nothing that I can think of that has fulfilled me more than working at the bedside. I have 7 credentials after my name, but they don't mean anything. All they mean is that I got more knowledge. But it's my favorite time has always been in an intensive care room with the door shut, and it's just me and the patient, and we know each other. And I just thank God for letting me do that.
Oh, beautiful. Well, Donna, we can't thank you enough. This has just been our complete honor to make you our very first member spotlight. And we look forward to having it in our very first Nebraska Nurse Honor Guard newsletter.
Well, and I can't thank you enough. Sometimes one day somebody is going to invent a word that means thank you as the epitome of Thanksgiving. And I don't know what that word is, but from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you.